Good evening, everyone. This is Chris, and unfortunately, JX quite recently has just messaged me and said that he's not feeling very well. I'm going to keep the chat open though, so hopefully, if he is feeling up to it, he can jump on. So this is a little bit impromptu. I'm a little bit unprepared for this, but I've done live streams before, so hopefully I can still get my review across for these. But hopefully he's feeling a bit better soon and can jump on, because I know that these just tend to work better as a more conversational piece. But nevertheless, I am here, and I am here to talk about Andor season 2. We got the next 3 episodes last night. So this is episode 4, 5, and 6, titled "Ever Been to Gorman? I Have Friends Everywhere, and What a Festive Evening." What I was quite excited about was these next 4 episodes was the fact that they were written by Beau Willimon, who wrote my favorite arc during season 1, which was the prison escape, with like the Andy Serkis prison break collection of 4 episodes. Outstanding television, fantastically written, wonderfully paced, and with an incredible payoff. And I think that is easily my favorite part, especially on a rewatch as well, of Andor season 1. And when I saw that Beau was penning these next 3 episodes, I was actually really excited to see what we'd get. Season 2 was off to a mostly solid start, but I had a lot of discrepancies with the first 3 episodes, with the 3-episode premiere that we had. Most notably was Cassian Andor's story, which I thought was almost entirely pointless. There was some really awkward humor in there. It felt very Marvel-ish. You have like the group of guys playing rock, paper, scissors, and just a lot of the script writing for that, and just the way that the actors delivered that felt very amateurish. And it almost felt like we wasted 3 episodes for Cassian's story. We only have a few arcs during this series, and this, as people probably know, this is taking us through the remaining 4 years leading up to Rogue One. So just structurally, the storytelling's very different for this series. Series 1, you had a contained narrative from episode 1 all the way up until episode 12 of this unfolding narrative. With this show, we're getting 4 3-episode arcs. So I was actually really worried about that. That was one of my biggest concerns going into series 2, was how are they going to pull off structurally this narrative, because you literally have to reset the clock. You reset the characters at the beginning of every 3 episodes, and it can be difficult to follow. We're missing out huge gaps, and it doesn't seem like we can get the same payoffs to certain characters. There's huge parts of this show which feels very dragged out, especially in series 2. I actually didn't mind the slow burn in series 1 once I got used to it, and especially on a rewatch, I really appreciated that. This series feels almost like, what do people remember mostly from series 1? They remember it being a slow burn. Well, we're going to purposely make this very drawn out, very elongated, and by the time you hit the end of the episode arc, by the time you get through all 3 episodes, you look back and you try and think what was achieved. Like, where have the characters come from the first episode to the end of this 3rd episode? And then it kind of dawns on you that not a whole lot's happened. For me, that the stuff in the first 3 episodes, the most exciting stuff was the stuff with Mon Mothma and the whole wedding ceremony, the Chandrilan wedding. I really liked that stuff in the world building. But even then, you have 3 episodes dedicated to that wedding, pretty much. And if you just tighten up the pacing a little bit in some regards, maybe you could get that done in, 1 or at least 2 episodes. So I am feeling the effects of series 2 a lot more. I don't think it's as tightly written, and I'm noticing a lot more discrepancies in the screenwriting, especially with these next 3 episodes as well. I think overall, these 3 episodes that we had last night, episodes 4, 5, and 6, I do prefer those 3 episodes to the premiere that we had. But that being said, we're halfway through the series now. We've got 2 weeks left to go. We've got 2 more arcs, and I need this show to pick up. It's not hitting the highest of heights, and it could go all out in the next couple of arcs. It really could. It could really stick the landing, and then we've got a season 2 where the first 6 episodes are not bad. There's some great moments, but overall a pretty lackluster second series in comparison to the first one. But if it ends really fantastically well and the writing's great and everything's firing on all cylinders and it gets you really hyped, then I don't know. I always think that with films as well. If you've got a bang average film or a film that's maybe not even all that great, but then the ending is incredible, that leaves the lasting impact on you. And if you're leaving the movie theater or if you're switching off the film, you're kind of riding the highs off the ending. So maybe that's going to be the case with this. I don't think this arc penned by Beau Willimon is as strong as the Prison Break arc from Series 1. And I was let down by this a little bit. I'm going to get to a couple of comments now. We've got Carl in the comments who says, I'll be honest, I'm done with Andor, just not for me. I'll still watch your videos, but feel so drawn out. Well, I appreciate you still watching the videos, man. I really appreciate that. And yeah, it's starting to fade for me a little bit as well. And it's all stemming from this season too. Now, I ain't going to go so far as to say that this is a bad show. I don't think it's a bad show, but as I mentioned, it almost felt like they were beholden to the slow pace. It felt like that was probably intentional for the first series, and then this series, it's like, well, we did that in series 1, so it means we've got to do it in this one as well. Yeah, these 3 episodes that have just come out, you can probably break it down into maybe 4 different narrative beats with this one. You have Cassian and Bix's story, where they're active operatives stationed on Coruscant, and they're not under house arrest, but they're having to keep a low profile, and they just wait for Luthen to come in occasionally and say, hey, I've got a mission for you if you choose to accept. With this storyline as well, you have Bix, who's wrestling with PTSD from the torture that she was subjected to by Dr. Gorst in Series 1. And this was one thing that the last 3 episodes that we had, episodes 1, 2, and 3, we had the very controversial scene, right? The attempted rape scene of Bix from one of the Imperial guys who came in to inspect the town. And a lot of people were up in arms about this scene. It's probably the thing that's had the most conversation about it. It's not actually the quality of the show or lack thereof, or whatever your opinions are of Andor. The main thing that people have been talking about is that one scene, the very, very controversial scene. And my stipulation was that, did I find it necessary? It depends. It depends what that scene and what it does, what it accomplishes, and does that have a lasting impact on the character of Bix narratively? And I think someone brought that up in the comments last week as well, saying, well, if it's just thrown in there for shock value, then Disney can get fucked. But if it actually has a bearing on the character, and watching these 3 episodes, I really still don't think it does. We've got another 6 episodes left, so it could come back. To me, it just felt like a very mean-spirited way of just piling all of this abuse on Bix. She went through loads of torture at the hands of Dr. Gorst in Series 1, and I feel like that was significant baggage enough to have, to hate the Empire and to want to see it be torn down with everything that she was subjected to. To throw that in last week as well just felt like we were piling on something narratively that had already been covered. And I think more to that point with this is that Bix is really just wrestling with the PTSD and flashbacks of Dr. Gorst. Nothing to do with that Imperial general from last week and the attempted rape scene. So with these 3 episodes that we're presented with this week, it kind of draws reference to the fact of how pointless that rape scene or attempted rape scene really was in the grand scheme of things. Because I think narratively you could still achieve what you have. You have her being tortured in Series 1. You have her continuing to have those nightmares and PTSD from those events. And ultimately it leads to her becoming essentially a drug addict. She needs these I don't even know if they're explained what they are. It's this little blue liquid, like a little tab that she puts in her mouth, and it kind of spaces her out, and she becomes hooked on them. She needs them to be able to sleep and to quiet her nightmares that's going on. And I feel like all of that could have been communicated without having that additional narrative beat last week, which was perhaps just done for shock value. Just getting to a few more comments here. Carl says, Rogue One made it feel like K2 and Andor had this long-lasting friendship. Yes, I agree. Who had been on many adventures. They haven't met yet. Yeah, I know. I completely get that too. Surely they have to meet next week in the next group. You need at least 6 episodes with them. So yeah, ultimately now they've been together for maybe, well, it's going to have to be 2 years. It's going to be a year to 2 years that K2 was with Andor. Everything's kind of spread out with this, with how they're choosing to advance the story with this, skipping a year each time. And it just makes it complicated for proper relationships to develop. You know, even stuff like Cyril and Dedra, which I know me and JX kind of disagreed on this a little bit, in that, you know, JX thought that their relationship was given enough foundation in series 1, and he didn't mind that those two were together. Whereas when I got to the end of series 1, I said, I really hope these two characters don't end up in some kind of quote unquote romantic relationship. I'd rather them just be peers and, you know, colleagues, and trying to look out for each other as they both work their way up the ladder in the ISB. And we really haven't got that. And to keep stopping and starting the narrative and skipping a year, it's difficult to fill in that, because we're missing out all of that information. It's one of the criticisms that's often leveled at the Star Wars prequels, in that all of the character building moments, all of the important stuff where you see characters interact and build those relationships, and all of those good, strong character development scenes are not in the prequels. Not really. They all happen off screen. You know, young Annie in Phantom Menace, and then all of a sudden he's a man grown in Attack of the Clones. We haven't seen any of his training or where he's developed. And then the Clone Wars, where he's been best friends with Obi-Wan and fighting alongside him. I know they've done the Clone Wars TV show, but filmically we don't see that, and we get all of these mentions to past experiences that they've been on. And it's a similar feeling with this one, because we only get 3 hours of run. I say we only get 3 hours of runtime. Imagine how much stuff they could contain within those 3 hours. We see entire films, The Lord of the Rings, for example. Look how much story they contain within those 3 hours, and character building moments. And so far, I really don't feel like we've got that. We have a lot of random scenes, which I don't see what they're building to at the moment. We've got an overall arc that's going on with the Empire and the ISB, that they're trying to infiltrate Gorman to gain their trust, and ultimately they want to mine the resources from that planet, which could make the planet unstable, because they want this mineral. I forgot the name of it now. Calcite. They need this mineral from deep within the planet, because it's needed for what will ultimately become the lenses for the Death Star. And the Empire's got to deliver. You know, they've got to deliver this to the Emperor and get it done. So that's the overall plot. And I suppose jumping all these years shows how they have to plant the seeds of it. They have to get one of their own team on the planet of Gorman. They have to gain the trust of the people on Gorman, whilst simultaneously starting to build things like an armory, because they're planning for this big attack that will happen when they try and commandeer the resources for the planet. And that can be interesting to see how many years that takes, but it is at the detriment of character development, I feel. And even then, I think you could still do some interesting character development with a lot of these, but so far with Cyril and Dedra, I don't think we've really done all that much. Within the first 3 episodes, we had some comic relief, you know, the mother-in-law from hell coming over and meeting the family. And then this one, you have Cyril and Dedra, who are mostly apart from each other. Cyril's on this mission in Gorman, and he's feigning being a rebellion sympathizer in order to gain their trust, whilst also feeding information back to the ISB. And that's all we're getting, really. I don't think we're getting any of like the really good, juicy character stuff. And I think ultimately this is down to the fact that this was meant to be a 5-season show. And each season, you know, say if they stuck with 12 episodes per season, was going to cover those years. And I'd actually think that probably would have been better. I don't know if Andor as a show would have had legs for 5 seasons. That does seem like a little bit of a stretch. But to then decide, I don't know if it was at the 11th hour this was decided, if they had stories planned for all 5 seasons and then they went, right, how do we contain all of those 5 seasons and just merge it all into one second and final season? I'm kind of with Carl on this one. I'm really not digging it, and a lot of things that you expected to happen based on Rogue One are now contradicted. Stuff with K2, I guess it's not contradicted, but it does lull you into the idea that, as you mentioned, K2 and Cassian have been best friends for life. There's even stuff where Cassian says, I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old, which implies that he was actually already part of the rebellion and fighting the good fight against the Empire since he was 6, which is contradicted in Series 1 of Andor, and ultimately only really becoming part of the Rebel Alliance maybe during this season, and even then he's still being just sent on random missions here and there. It doesn't seem like he's actually been part of the overall cause. Yeah, it's messy. I'm struggling with this series a little bit. I don't hate it, and I don't know if that's genuinely because the bar is so low with Disney Star Wars at the moment, but I speak as I find. I really did enjoy Series 1. There's some solid writing in there. And there are still shining moments, even in Series 2 for me, of good writing, great direction, the way the camera moves and everything. It's all very dynamic. The editing's good. But I think the actual contents of the show and the narrative thrust, the narrative drive, I don't feel like there's enough meat to the story. And I do feel like it's being stretched to breaking point over these 3 episodes. And ultimately you get to the end and you think you've achieved a lot. You've watched three hours of something, but when you break it down, the characters haven't really moved all that much. So as far as I'm concerned at the moment, I feel like maybe with some exceptions to some of the Mon Mothma stuff, I feel like we've been treading water and wasted 6 hours of screen time. Half of the screen time of this series, which is a problem. Carl says that scene wasn't necessary. Many ways to get the same effect without going there. It's just another way to give it to them. Yeah, I don't know how many of these Disney Star Wars feels like it's very spiteful towards Star Wars, and it's doing everything within its power to make it not Star Wars. And I think when I watched Andor Series 1, that was one of the things that actually weirdly attracted me to the series. I've been very vocal on these reviews saying that I have to keep reminding myself that it is Star Wars, that it's set in the Star Wars world. When I watch this show, it feels like I'm watching just like a dystopian rebellion film, fighting against fascism and showing the rise of that and the cost of war and all of the bad, gnarly things that come with it. And when I watch it that way, I'm like, yeah, this is a pretty good show. The writing's among some of the best within the Star Wars name. But yet it has none of the things that make it feel like Star Wars. Well, sure, it has TIE fighters here and there. It has stormtroopers and it has some planet names and some aliens and characters that you may remember. But the actual core of what makes Star Wars feel like Star Wars and that call to adventure and the fantasy elements and the spiritual side of things, the very theatrical way that maybe lines are delivered, or it's all going back to traditional fairy tale themes. That's why a lot of people say that Star Wars isn't science fiction, it's science fantasy. It very much is borrowing all of those fantasy elements that you would get from stuff like well, it was very inspired by Dune or Lord of the Rings or everything like that, or even going way back further, just mythology. You don't really get that in this series. So I feel like if you are a fan of Andor, you have to go into it with that particular lens. And I know that some people can't shake that off. They see the Star Wars name in there, and there is an expectation there that this fits within the overall blanket of Star Wars. And of course it has to, because this is leading up to Rogue One, which itself is very much in the same vein as pushing towards A New Hope as well. So what's going to be very interesting, though, and I think me and JX are planning on doing this, is once season 2 of this show's finished and we're all done, we're then going to go back to Rogue One, because I haven't watched that in a long, long time. And I want to see how that will go over now that we've had so many other Star Wars TV shows and really, really bad Disney Star Wars content. But how it feels as almost like an unofficial season 3 or season finale to this whole Andor verse, which I guess I'm gonna call it now, Andor verse even. Carl says, rewatching Sith, it cemented what Star Wars is to me. Gay kisses and rape just isn't for me. Just isn't what I call Star Wars. That's totally fair enough. And oh boy, do they push the whole, the good old focused lesbian kiss in this one, isn't there? None of that. Episode 9, those two old chicks in the background in a crowd shot, which they can easily cut out when they market it towards China. Oh no, this is like Game of Thrones level right here. So let's go through some of these beats then. So Cassian and Bix, they're just chilling on Coruscant, and they're kind of under house arrest, but they're just keeping a low profile. Cassian is very, very paranoid after everything they've gone through, and he's very, very overprotective of Bix. He doesn't want her sort of seen in public. He doesn't want to go, like she says, oh, let's go for a walk. I'd like to go and walk in the park. He's like, we can't. There's too many cameras there. So they're still very much feeling the effects of this lifestyle, and the paranoia set in that all eyes are on them. And I don't know if it's made to look like Cassian is a bad guy for feeling this. You know, after everything that Bix has gone through, all of this torture, and he rescued her in Series 1, and then everything that also happened in the previous 3 episodes with the attempted rape scene, I can't see him as a villain for wanting to try and protect Biggs, even if he is overprotective of her. She's clearly gone through a lot, and she's dealing with that in not the healthiest of ways, where she's essentially become a junkie and relying on that to just escape all of the nightmares that she's got going through. But this plot line, I'm going to be jumping around here. I think I'm just going to review each story arc in its own way. Cassian is tasked by Luthen to go to Gorman after he hears that the ISB are taking a particular interest in this planet, and that they've got, you know, ISB on the ground there, and that they're building an armory, and there's all whispers of an uprising that's about to happen. So he sends Cassian there, and Cassian really doesn't want to go, but he heads there, and he's tasked to just sort of observe the rebels on that planet and this uprising that's going on, and deciding whether he wants to be a part of this attack or not. Ultimately, he decides that he doesn't want to do it, and he's like, no, not feeling it. I don't want to do this. And I'm like, this is our hero? Like, okay, so Cassian doesn't want to be part of this rebellion. So where does that leave us with our titular character of Andor? In the first 3 episodes, he did absolutely nothing. You know, as we mentioned in the previous review, I feel like you could almost lift a grand majority of Cassian's storyline out of those first 3 episodes, and you wouldn't lose a damn thing. And in this one, we're meant to, you know, I want to see him get into the fight. I want to see him fighting this good fight. And he's tasked to go on a mission, and he just says, yeah, no, I'm not feeling it. I don't want to do it. Give it to someone else. And that's it. And it just turns Cassian into a very, very passive character for me in these 3 episodes. The impression that I got at the end of Series 1 in the final scene where he boards that ship with Luthen, I got the impression that he was like raring to go, like, I'm a part of this cause now. I'm in it. I'm with you on this cause, and I'm essentially a part of the Rebel Alliance now. And I was really excited to see where we'd pick up with Cassian's story, and we've kind of got his origin, if you will, getting him into the fight, and now let's go. And we've done nothing with him. So far, he's been a hostage on a planet for multiple episodes, watching people play rock, paper, scissors. He rescued Bix. Okay, cool. And then in this one, he's just this really, really super paranoid guy. And I don't even think he's bad for being paranoid. I don't think he's a flawed character for wanting to protect the woman he cares about, especially after she's been apprehended and kidnapped and subjected to all of these horrible things. But to me, it just turns him into a passive character. And he dresses up as this very flamboyant character, and as a designer to scope out Gorman, and then ultimately decides he wants no part in this. And ultimately, I feel like that's Cassian's story in these 3 episodes. Again, 3 hours of runtime, and I don't feel like we've achieved a whole lot with Cassian during all of this. This, to me, almost feels like they're going in the same direction that they did with Mando Season 3. Also, was it me? Did Ruby Wax get a celebrity cameo in this? I need to actually check if she's still alive. I might be... I swear it was Ruby Wax. Was it her in Andor? Yeah, it was. Oh my god, it was her. Yeah, so there's like a shot where Bix is just completely comatose from, you know, taking all of these drugs to suppress her memories and her nightmares, and you get this really cringe-worthy sort of loose women kind of Star Wars equivalent of loose women on the TV. It's like Coruscant Daily or something, and yeah, Ruby Wax is there, and I was like, oh, that took me out of it a little bit, and I was getting Jack, not quite as bad, but Jack Black and Lizzo vibes from Mando season 3, where they crowbar those really awkward celebrity cameos in there that it just takes you out of the world. It just reminds you that you're in your own world, and you go, oh, I recognize that face. Yeah, it's frustrating. Hey, Carl, don't worry. It says, sorry, don't mean to be negative tonight. Just voice your opinions, man. Just keep everything, you know, completely authentic. That's what I do. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to come down like thunder on this show, but it definitely is a step back from series 1, and I'm seeing a lot more of those elements creep in. I think the main thing where I'm bringing this comparison up with Mando season 3 is the fact that Mando season 3, unlike series 1 and 2, ain't about Mando. The mantle gets passed over to Bo-Katan, and then the Mandalorian becomes a very much more of a passive character in series 3, and the spotlight's shifted over to Bo-Katan, and I almost feel like that's what's happening with Andor. Andor was never the most compelling character to me, even in series 1. He felt like a character that was very much along for the ride, and he was just sort of passed between all of these different scenarios that were going on. And I wanted to see more from him in series 2. I wanted to see that growth. It's fine if you want a character like that, where they're sort of like an observer, and they're just moving from all these different situations. They're caught up in this bigger world. But based on the ending, I thought Andor was really going to start stepping up, and we'd see him taking more of a leadership role and an active role. And I don't feel like we get that. Ultimately, this storyline culminates. So here's the weird like dilemma with this show, is that there's huge parts of it where it feels really dragged out, and then there's other narrative beats that feel really rushed, and there's been no proper effective setup for it. And the biggest case of that for me is the very ending of this whole arc of Cassian and Bix, in that Bix just snaps out of her drug habit, and she's fully reinvigorated. She's kicked the habit. She's kicked all of her nightmares away. And there's just a random scene where she gets her revenge on Dr. Gorst. They apparently know the location to him. She sneaks into his office. There's no security there at all. And it's even more weird because before this, there's a meeting at the ISB saying that they really like the work of Dr. Gorst, and the Emperor wants to start arresting more people. He wants more interrogations. He wants more of those terrifying people that torture people for information. And that he's drafting in even more of them into the ISB and into the Empire. So you think that Dr. Gorst would be like a prime commodity at this point, that he would have, you know, lavish apartments, he would be, you know, under surveillance all the time and security out the wazoo and everything. But Bix apparently just sneaks in. We don't even see her sneak in. She just sneaks into the building. She's already waiting in the room for him. He takes a seat, and then she gets her revenge. She ties him to the chair, and she places the headphones with the anguished screams of that dying alien race that is meant to, you know, make people catatonic. She just says, this will not be quick. This will feel like a lifetime. And then I think Cassian blows up the building, and it all sets on fire. Now, I don't know if that apartment block was a block that was erected to house all of these new executioners in, so he took them all out in one fell swoop, or if it's just an apartment block that has Dr. Gorst at the top. Because if he just leveled an entire apartment block filled with mostly innocent civilians, but then one executioner at the top, that seems a little bit excessive to me. But there was just no setup to this revenge plot. It's, you know, series 1 would take its time showing how people get all of this intel and how they plan their attack and how they achieve it. And it just felt like, well, we're going to be jumping a year ahead again next episode, so we need to quickly get Bix back in the game and get her back in the fight and get her healthy. And it all happens off screen for pretty much 2 3/4 episodes. Bix is pretty much, just riddled with nightmares, a complete junkie because she's trying to deal with all of her PTSD until she isn't in the final scene. And oh yeah, she's also killed Dr. Gorst. Isn't that cathartic? And it's like, well, no, because we've got the payoff to it. And I'm not saying that the payoff couldn't have worked well, but there was none of the setup to it. In my opinion, anyway, it felt very, very random at the end of this because, as I say, next week we're going to be jumping a year ahead, and it will be a new scenario and a new conflict that we need to place our characters into. So, wasn't a fan personally of the Cassian and Bix stuff in this one. Another character that I feel has been weaker and has been diluted a bit is Luthen. Now, I could see that some people would argue that this is character development and this is an absolute fine trajectory for his character to go on, but he randomly just starts freaking out all over the place in this. He's been in this fight for ages. He's like a master of whisperers. He's got his fingers in all the pies. He's got double agents working for him. He's getting all of this information, and he works in the shadows, and he puts on this masquerade to the public in order to preserve what he's really doing, fighting this cause. And there's a moment where he just freaks out to his assistant. And I've written the quote down here. He says, "I can't keep track anymore. All these lines we've made, all this information, the radios, the frequencies, the messages flying around. We're drowning." And it's his assistant who has to say, "Look, calm the fuck down. Everything's okay." And again, it's his assistant who just tells him what he already knows. We get that amazing monologue in series 1 where he just talks about everything he has to sacrifice in his personal life, relationships, a future. He has to sacrifice all of these things for a future he may never see. He knows what he signed up for, and he's the head honcho. And then all of a sudden he just starts freaking out saying, "Oh, there's too many messages and too many spies and too many things for my little head to keep track of." I'm like, who's this? This isn't Luthen. Luthen's arguably one of the best characters that Disney Star Wars has created. A very, very fascinating character played fantastically by Skarsgård. And I really don't like how this series is just making him very passive in this. Some people might argue, well, this just shows as the years are going by, it's taking its toll on him and, he's slipping up. But this doesn't feel like Luthen. It doesn't feel like, he runs a tight ship. He knows the ins and outs of everything. He knows how to navigate everything. And he's just freaking out, and he needs his assistant to just go, "Stop freaking out." The whole plot with Luthen in this is that because he's an antiques dealer, isn't he, by day? That's his masquerade. And Skulden, who is the brother-in-law of Mon Mothma, he finds out that one of these items that he's bought from Luthen's store is a fake. It's a forgery. And he wants to go through his entire collection. I don't know if that means his own personal collection or if he wants to go through Luthen's store to make sure that all of his wares are above board. But essentially, he's going to inspect all of the goods that he has. And in doing so, he will find on one of these items that there is a microphone that's been planted because Luthen and his assistant have been listening into Skulden's conversations. And if Skulden finds that device that's been planted on his artwork, then the jig's up. Then Luthen is exposed and everything will all fall apart. And his assistant, Luthen's assistant, tells him this, and he just freaks out. He says, "Oh, so all hope is lost then, basically. What are we going to do?" She says, "Well, we need to get in there and remove that device." She's the voice of reason in all of this. And he says, "Oh, and what if we can't?" And she says, "Well, then we need to prepare." That is not the Luthen that I know from series 1. As soon as he knows that, he'll be like, "Right, I'm going to devise a plan. We need to remove that. We need to get in there. We need to get it done." And similar to Cassian, it just feels like another character that's just been completely... He's just a total wet wipe so far in this series. It ultimately culminates where they go to Skulden's art exhibition, and you've got some of the head honchos there. You've got a lot of the ISB. You've got a lot of the Empire. Krennic's there as well, and it's all high society kind of stuff. There's some fun back and forth between Mon Mothma and Krennic where they're discussing their politics and trying to point score with each other. That's kind of cool. I like that. And it's really weird how this is framed. So you have Krennic and you have Skulden and Mon Mothma and everything going around his little exhibition that he's got all these art pieces. Meanwhile, you have Luthen's assistant who's trying to fuck with that art piece. She's trying to remove that microphone that's been planted in there. And she's got their double agent who's working in the ISB stood in front of her. And I'm like, why is no one not noticing that she's fucking with this art piece? She's acting really suspicious. She's not hanging with the rest of the group. She's she's the other side of the room, and she's just messing with this art piece, and she's trying to unscrew this thing from underneath it. And she's telling the guy, she says, you need to block my view. Just move to the left a little bit, and then move to the right a little bit. I'm like, how is no one noticing these two characters? They're in plain sight. They're right there. Why doesn't one of them go like, hey, guys, you're missing these incredible art pieces. Why don't you come over here? Why doesn't someone look over and go, she's acting very suspicious. What's going on over there then? It felt very, very campy, like this whole bit towards the end. This just felt like sloppy writing to me to even put them in that situation. I don't buy it at all. And they do ramp up the tension with the editing, I suppose, once you get invested in it. But I just thought there is no way that Krennic and all of these intellectuals in the room wouldn't notice and go, hey, what that's my art piece over there. Why you got your hands all over it? Why are you messing with it? It's delicate. Leave it alone. And also, like, after, so she does remove the device and everything's okay and their cover's not blown. And one of the final scenes is Luthen and his assistant leaving this place in broad daylight, in public, with people around them. And they're joking. They're saying, like, oh, maybe we should go back up to that room and kill Krennic ourselves. And I'm like, there is no way that they would be this brazen. There is no way that they would be this bold and expressing their disdain for the Empire out loud in public, especially in high society, especially when you've got Krennic still in the building and people around that could be in league with him. That's the whole crux of what made Luthen and his operation fantastic, is that he is having to put on this front. If Mon Mothma comes into the store, he can't openly be talking about the Empire or the rebellion or anything like that. He has to put on a show. And he says, oh, I've got a new piece coming in, and quite a lot of buyers are interested in that. And that's code for there's a mission coming up. There's a lot of people involved. And it's all in code. And it's all very, hush hush. Whereas in this series, even in the first few episodes at Mon Mothma's daughter's wedding, he's just walking up to Mon Mothma, and both of them are just talking about the cause and everything to do with the money and the funds. And I'm like, people are around. You've just completely abandoned this front. And it feels like they're trying to do it. They're trying to do half and half with this show. There's a scene where Cassian comes to his store to express his distaste for Luthen. And Luthen's like, right, the cover story for this is that you were delivering a piece to me in the middle of the night. That's going to be the cover story. Okay, so they are still trying to do elements of that. And then you just have moments where quite openly in public, he'll just say, oh, we should kill Krennic and down with the Empire. And I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's as tightly written or as cleverly written as Series 1 was. Carl says, it's the sneaking layer out under Obi-Wan's coat again. Hard to see the Empire as a threat. Yeah, totally. And one thing that there's loads of things that I love about Andor Series 1, but it made the Empire threatening again. Even just one TIE fighter flying overhead, the sound it made, it had a real impact in that series. And it made the moments of where there was rioting in the streets have real teeth to it and just, real impact behind it, because it made the stormtroopers and the Empire a truly terrifying, crushing force on the public. We open this series with, I'm not even going to pull any punches with this, a scene where Cassian's stealing the TIE fighter that felt very, very reminiscent of Finn and Poe shooting their way out of the hangar at the beginning of Force Awakens. And that ain't a great comparison to have. You've got the stormtroopers that are just lined up like cannon fodder again and just getting pot-shotted, and there's no klaxon, there's no siren, there's no security measures or anything like that. They're just not competent in the first 3 episodes of this. And then you have moments like this where all of this stuff's literally happening right in front of them. It's not like they were in a second building or like a side room. That's how you would have done it. Maybe he's got all of his pieces, all of his different collections in a gallery in different rooms. Galleries have different rooms. And maybe she sneaks away from the group and she's having to try and fix it, and he's about to approach that room. He's finishing showing the Empire his collection in this room, but he's about to go into that room that she's in, and she needs to get that thing removed and get out of that room before they get there. You could still have the intercutting, you could still have the editing, but you don't place her in the same room where everyone can quite clearly see her in the same room. So yeah, that's how I'd rewrite that scene. You could still have the same beat to it and the same scenario, but just I don't know. It's very frustrating. So I don't really like what they're doing with Luthen this series, and just how they're stepping away from the things that made him very intriguing, and his whole operation of keeping things really low key. Let's see. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water because I've been running my mouth for 40 minutes. So the next two characters, well, the main thing I want to talk about now is Gorman. We'll go into that. Okay, so I would say the main spotlight for this episode are the characters of Val and Cinta. Who are Val and Cinta, I hear you ask? Well, Val is the sister of Mon Mothma, and Cinta is her lesbian lover, who we haven't really had much dialogue from at all. We get told in Series 1 that the two of them were already sleeping together when they were on the job together, quite literally on the job together. And since then, they've gone their separate ways, and they haven't seen each other for a long, long time. Cinta seems like she's very avoidant of Val, and Val hasn't really got over the fact... Oh, Vel, sorry, I think her name's Vel. Hasn't got over the fact that their relationship hasn't had closure. And she saw her from afar at the end of episode 3, where Cinta was going to take care of that loose end, that one who was going to sort of be the whistleblower on Mon Mothma's finances. And that was it. And then we get them back together in this episode, and they have a sit-down conversation. So when Cassian decides not to take the job on Gorman, the job is passed over to Vel, who only takes the job because she knows that Cinta is also going to be working that job as well. And it's going to be an opportunity for them to rekindle their relationship, or at least have a conversation about it and get some closure. This isn't a scintillating romance. It really isn't. I don't feel like we've had a lot of time developing this romance, because the two haven't really spent all that much time together. And again, it's kind of a race to the finish. You could have had this developing over seasons and seasons. Instead, we've got to reunite them for these 3 episodes in order to bring this relationship to a close at the very end of the episode, which of course they do. So as soon as they sit down in a cafe, they're having a chat about things. Cinta essentially just says, "Oh, I was confused." And she says, "I had an accident. I'll tell you about it someday." And as soon as I heard her say that, I was like, okay, so when's Cinta dying then? Because isn't that just a trope? Game of Thrones does it loads. Whenever a character says, "We'll talk more about this when I return," guess what? They ain't returning. So as soon as she said that, I was like, oh, okay, she's for the chop then, isn't she? She's not making it out of this. Speaking of making out, we follow this up with the lesbian kiss. And, I'm not going to say it's out of the blue. I've seen a lot of articles online saying, oh, how stunning and brave this is. The first proper lesbian kiss in Star Wars. I'm like, well, it isn't. We've had a lesbian kiss before. We've had gay characters in Star Wars before. This isn't anything new. It does feel just... I won't even see, just seeing that feels very out of place with Star Wars. It's difficult to look at this through a lens of this is what Disney's pushing, because they have pushed this. They've been very vocal about how they're pushing this. And it'll be interesting to see if there's any articles released about this where, the main talking point about the first 3 episodes was the rape scene. And it's really important that, I think even Tony Gilroy says, we're all products of rape, and it's really important that we have this in the show. If articles start cropping up about this, how stunning and brave, and how Star Wars really needed a same-sex kiss scene It really needed that. That's what Star Wars needed. If we get articles like that, then we know why this was in the show. I didn't feel like this was a massive deal to me personally because they'd already established that Vel and Cinta were, a gay couple, and that's fine. But it's, I can understand why some people would think, oh, this is another tick in that this doesn't feel like Star Wars, because it almost felt. I actually wondered. I thought, are we going to go into a full blown sex scene with this? Because that would feel exceptionally out of place in Star Wars, and sort of even how this isn't even me just going, oh well, it's a same sex kiss. I'm up in arms about that. I'm not. But I was even kind of thinking this is a step too far when we see Bix and Cassian as well. There's this really weird moment where they're doing all of this like hand finger caressing. I'm like, is this how they make love on Coruscant? Like, I don't know. It felt very, very overt. And again, it's not out of place for Andor. If you look at Andor as it's just this random sci-fi dystopian show, which has all of this the turmoils of war and love and loss and everything. But if you add Star Wars to it, then you kind of go, well, that scene doesn't make sense. The way that character dresses doesn't really fit, or that line of dialogue there felt a little bit too modern, or maybe there's a few too many words of profanity in there that just takes you out of it, that doesn't feel like what we've had before. And I think it's just a case of that, really. So I can understand some people up in arms about it, just saying, oh, it doesn't feel like Star Wars, or it's Disney pushing this agenda. It's not giving us Star Wars fans what we want from the name Star Wars. I wasn't really against it. The only thing that I'm against is that I just don't feel anything for these two characters, this relationship. I don't feel like it's been earned. I don't feel like it's been built up to. I feel absolutely nothing for Cinta's character. And this show, these few episodes really, really want you to think that Cinta is the best fucking thing ever. Because again, Disney can't just show you it. They have to tell you how amazing a character is and how stunning and brave she was. Ultimately, it culminates in this weapons heist where Vel and Cinta are aiding the Gorman rebels in order to steal some weapons from trucks that are being delivered to the armory on the Empire's base on Gorman. The Empire are aware of this, the ISB is aware of this, and they allow the rebels to be successful in this regard because they want to get that uprising going. They want to stir the pot. And there's a bit of a exchange, a bit of a ruckus in the street, and a shot's fired, and ultimately it hits Cinta and kills her. The guy who accidentally killed her is crying, and Vel just scolds him. She just goes off on him. And here's the quote. She's talking about Cinta here, her dead lover. And again, this to me was Disney sort of in big neon writing saying, this is how amazing Cinta was, and she was stunning and brave. Vel says, quote, she was a warrior. She was everything you have daydreamed about. She was a blooded, fearless warrior whose loss will be mourned in ways that you will never understand. She was a miracle. I was like, how about you actually build up Cinta's character over the two series and just actually make her a character rather than this vestige of a miracle, which I'm sorry, really doesn't come across on screen. She's just another rebel. She barely speaks. She's hardly had any dialogue. I don't really get much of a personality from her at all. I didn't buy this relationship at all. I don't know if that's from the directing or the writing, but when we got to that monologue at the end, and it's just, you're really trying to hammer home how incredible this person was, and I'm just like, you haven't earned that. If you'd have earned that, you wouldn't need a monologue like that. You wouldn't need lines of dialogue like that. We would feel that as the audience. When she's tragically killed, we would feel that absolute, guttural loss that is, to see that character die. I feel more like Andy Serkis's character in series 1 of Andor during that prison escape. He leads them all to freedom. He sees the outside world, and then he just hits you with that, I can't swim. And it's so tragic. And like everyone that dies in that prison, because you're so invested in their plight and you really want to see them get out of that situation. You feel it when they're all escaping. And two full, and that was over the course of 4 episodes. We've technically had Cinta across 2 seasons, very sparingly granted, and I just feel absolutely nothing for her. So yeah, this was some really bad writing. Again, I was really surprised that it was Beau Willimon who wrote this, who wrote those prison episodes in series 1. JX says, this arc felt the most like it was meant to be part of a bigger story arc. Like I felt the missing season here, including from series 1. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. That's a very, very fair assessment. Carl says Disney can't help themselves. The original trilogy said so much about good versus evil, family trauma, and so many adult topics that even a child could understand. Yeah, and I was 6 years old. I feel like Andor now. I've been watching Star Wars since I was 6 years old, but I have. And I was pretty dumb with subtext as a kid. I probably wasn't a very bright child. I'm not a very bright adult, but I picked up on the subtext. I picked up on what it was trying to say, but I was just very literal with stuff when I was a kid. So the moment in Return of the Jedi, I'll never forget it. I absolutely adore the ending of Return of the Jedi. And I know people have their hang-ups on it, and a lot of people really shit on Return of the Jedi. It does have some second act problems, Han Solo's character, yada, yada, yada. But the ending, what it culminates to, is the most important part for me. And it really, really sticks the landing. And it's the moment where Luke gives into his anger and he starts wailing on Vader and he cuts his hand off. And as a kid, it's the moment where he looks at his father's severed hand and it's full of, sparking wires and everything. And he looks back at his own hand in the black leather glove. Now, I was a stupid kid that clearly didn't pay attention to movies. As a kid, I thought that was a literal, like the hand that he cut off Vader had somehow grafted itself onto Luke. I don't know why I thought that, because he had the black glove all the way throughout the movie. But when he looks at it and you hear like the gears in his hand and he's looking back, I took that completely literally as a 6-year-old, that Vader's hand had somehow morphed itself. And I thought, so if he continued to attack Vader, more parts of Vader would sort of graft itself to Luke. Now, I took that completely literally, but I understood the subtext that he was becoming Vader. Obviously it's an intention, but I took that completely literally as a kid. But I still got it. I still got what it was trying to say, and the impact of that, like, I'll never turn to the dark side, and he throws the lightsaber away. That was so powerful to me as a kid. Still powerful to me now when I watch it now. It's tremendous stuff. And unfortunately, I don't think we get this with Andor Series 2 so far. We've still got 6 episodes, so we could. I'm going to hold out hope. But hope is a very dangerous thing. So yeah, Vel just has a go at this little kid, this green rebel guy who, and you know what? I don't even blame him. Everything was going to plan. He was doing everything he needed to, everything that was asked of him, and then a random nosy fucking busybody civilian shows up and says, "Hey, what are you all doing over there?" And he's like, "Look, get out of here. Something's going on. It doesn't concern you. Just go back to your house." Like, he told him, he just said, "Look, you shouldn't be here. Just go back." And this guy was getting all uppity and like, "No, right, get out of my fucking way." Like, he didn't intend to shoot this guy. He was trying to protect the mission. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to blame anyone, blame like the buff as shit civilian guy who was too fucking nosy. He was probably like a curtain twitcher on Gorman. He's the one who's at fault. If he hadn't have interfered and you just go, "Oh, it's probably rebel stuff. Oh, good on you guys. I support you. Okay, I'm going to go back inside." If he'd have done that and he'd just shut the fuck up and not interfered, then Cinta wouldn't have died. And yet Vel blames the guy who accidentally shot a gun when he was in like a slanging match with this civilian guy. I don't blame him at all. If you're going to blame anyone, blame the civilian. That's my opinion anyway. There's just a couple of other things I want to mention. There's not a whole lot to mention now. I've pretty much given all my thoughts on this. There's some cool camera work with the weapons heist. I am noticing the actual filmmaking behind Andor, and it was, the sets are great. You can see the money on screen. Absolutely. The effects are great. And the actual sets that they've built, which they love to showcase, you really get a sense of all these different cultures that you see in all these different planets. Gorman itself is very, well, I was getting Sound of Music vibes from it, like Austria or something like that. When we get the establishing shot, you almost get this sort of like raucous brass band like papa, papa. It felt like high on a hill was a lonely ghost. It felt like we were going to go into something like that. But the language itself, and I was actually having this conversation with JX, feels like very much a mashup of French and German together. And it felt very French resistance. You know, listen very carefully. I shall say this only once, like hello or something. But I was noticing the way the camera moves. There's a moment where they're loading all of the weapons and they chuck it down this tunnel, and the camera's almost like it's strapped to the side of this crate, and they throw it down this tunnel, and the camera whizzes down side by side with the cargo as it's picked up at the bottom in one continuous shot. Stuff like that is fantastic, and you really do see the filmmaking and the directing behind it. The editing's great. And the music as well really does ramp up that tension. So there's good filmmaking stuff there. I can see the intention behind it, but I just think that the pacing of this particular series is too slow, and there's not enough meat there to the story. A couple of other things I want to mention. There's a character called an Oathkeeper, or the Oathkeeper. I haven't seen this character before. Now, it's unfortunate that JX isn't on the stream tonight, because I was going to ask him some questions about this character, or hopefully JX is still maybe in the comments. The Oathkeeper, is this a character from the expanded universe or the new canon or anything like that? So he shows up at the Senate, and all of the different senators have to congregate in the Senate and sort of pledge allegiance to the flag in a way. This guy walks out, this alien guy in this big robe. He's almost like, what was that guy's name from Infinity War? Like the creepy cleric guy. He's like, hear me and rejoice in the name of the great Titan. Oh, I forgot his name. That guy, Squidward from Infinity War. He's kind of a character like that, and he preaches the word of Palpatine. And he gets all the senators to just chant in unison about I pledge allegiance to the flag, like that kind of thing. I thought that was a really interesting concept. I haven't seen that before in Star Wars. We got Bath Time says, yo, just finished the match reaction to an incredible 3-0 away win. Excellent stuff. Glad to hear you're in high spirits, man. Unfortunately, we're not in high spirits because we're talking about 3 kind of lackluster episodes of Andor Series 2. Bath Time says, and I watched the first episode of Andor. It was perfectly fine. Are you talking about the first episode of Series 1 or the first episode of Season 2? Yeah, perfectly fine. I'm kind of in the same boat as that, or the low end of fine, I think. Let's see. What else I want to... So you got the Oathkeeper. Oh, okay. The Bail Organa recasting. We need to talk about that, don't we? I saw this news crop up on my Facebook maybe a couple of weeks ago, so I was already prepared for it. I just didn't know what episode it was going to be. Bail Organa, Jimmy Smits, who has played Bail Organa in Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. He's been in Rogue One. As far as I'm aware, he's been in the Kenobi show as well. I actually don't know if he's been in any or more. He may have voiced the character or some other stuff. Essentially, Jimmy Smits has cemented himself as the character of Bail Organa. He's been recast in this episode, and I'm to assume a few more episodes of this series as well, by actor Benjamin Bratt, who neither looks nor sounds like Bail Organa. It's a very, very small scene that's peppered in this episode, and I have to believe that that's because they're trying to cushion the blow. They couldn't just jump into a complete, loads and loads of scenes of Bail Organa with this new actor. So you have a real throwaway, blink and you'll miss it scene in this, where Mon Mothma's approaching the art gallery, and she's like, Bail Organa. And she has to refer to him by full name so that we, the audience, know who the fuck this new actor is, who, and which character he's meant to be playing. I hate it. I hate this recasting, and I know that I think it was Jimmy Smits' schedule didn't line up, but at that point, I know that Bail Organa is meant to be a huge, huge factor in the Rebel Alliance and working with Mon Mothma, but he wasn't in Series 1. And you could have mentions to him. You could have had his wife, she could have said that, Bail is on pressing business, so he sent me in his stead. You could have had Benjamin Bratt just play a different fucking character that we haven't seen. He didn't need to be Bail Organa. As I say, I understand the need to try and get Bail in this fight a little bit more, in this show a little bit more. But if the actor isn't there and you can't get him, I wouldn't have recast this character. It's not like a case of we made the original trilogy, now we're making the prequels, so of course you've got to recast characters because they've got to play their younger counterparts, and we've had 20 years or more since the original. That's fine because we're going back in time. But when we've had the same actor, and even with like Mon Mothma from the deleted scenes of Revenge of the Sith, she played Mon Mothma in the same actress played her in Rogue One, and now we've got her in the Andor series. It's weird to me that we've had the same thing with Jimmy Smits and now he's been recast. I hate recastings. I know sometimes they're necessary. I know there's no two ways around them. It always ruins the immersion for me, and especially when you've associated an actor so long with a particular character. I can't help it. I always just view them as a different character. I had the same thing in the Dark Knight films as well. You have Katie Holmes in the first one in Batman Begins, and then all of a sudden you have Maggie Gyllenhaal. And to me, it was almost like a completely separate character. It was Rachel Dawes in name only because her personality, the way she looked, her mannerisms, her attitude was just completely different. It's so, yeah, from screenshots that I've seen, it looks like we're going to get a lot more of Bail Organa scenes in the next couple of arcs. So hopefully some editing whiz kids can work their magic and do some good deep fakes out there, and we can maybe do an edit of Andor Series 2 if we even care. But the way that Season 2 is shaping up so far, I'm almost going to remove it from my head canon. I think. We'll see. It could end really, really well, and I hope it does. And if it does, then Season 1 will be fantastic all across the board, and then Season 2 will have a very, very slow half to not great first half, and then stick the landing. Bath Time says, oh, is everyone disappointed with Andor so far? Yeah, these 3 episodes, and I acknowledge that these 3 episodes are probably better than the first 3 episodes that were released. But even then, there's a lot of shortcomings in this for me. And I'm really feeling the pacing. And this isn't me, who needs lightsabers and shooty shoot pew pew every now and then, like some prominent Star Wars channels apparently need. I'm fine with a slow burn. I love Season 1, but there's just not enough narrative to this. And I think that's partly due to the fact that you're trying to condense 5 years into one singular season. And then also within those 3 episodes, it feels like, you get a really long drawn out first episode where not much happens. You get a really long drawn out second episode where nothing happens. And then you get kind of like a heist or a bit of an action beat at the end of the final one. So, yeah. And as Carl mentioned earlier, K2, where the fuck is K2? This friendship should have been developed for fucking years. We should have seen loads of this, and we just haven't. Bath Time says, could be about money, to be honest. Having him in Kenobi and not Andor is a wild move. Yeah, exactly. Do you think you're watching them too quickly? No, because I did think that, but me and JX had this conversation when we reviewed Series 1, in that they initially released the first 3 episodes in one go. And I think that was the best thing because me and JX, when we first watched it, we weren't too won over by the first 2 episodes of Andor Series 1. And it wasn't until we watched that 3rd episode where we were like, oh, okay, I can see where everything's heading now, and I'm really excited. I'm on board. And then the series just got better and better from there on. I actually quite like that they're releasing them in the specific character arcs. Could you imagine the first 3 episodes of this series weekly? You'd have had 3 weeks, so just shy of a month, and Mon Mothma would still be at that fucking wedding. Like, what else? 2-3 weeks in, and Andor's still a hostage on that fucking jungle planet where we've got people playing rock, paper, scissors. I think it would have been agonizing. People are complaining about the pacing when all 3 episodes are released in one go. You're essentially getting a 3-hour Star Wars movie every week, and people are still complaining about the pacing of it. I think that pacing amplified by releasing 1 episode a week, people aren't watching it now. Viewership's just through the floor. The viewership of this didn't even make the top 10 worldwide of people watching it. The audience just really isn't there for it. And I don't think that would have done the show any favors if you'd have dragged it out for 12 weeks. So I think they learned their lesson from Series 1 by releasing them in the episode arcs this series. Bath Time says, I prefer a double episode to start and then weekly. Gives it time to percolate. I agree. Unfortunately, I just don't think there's much percolation going on with Andor. I just don't think anyone's watching it. And this series, especially for me, I am really feeling the effects of that slow burn. And I guess the only other plot point, the only other plot thread that we haven't talked about is that we have Forrest Whitaker in it. Saw Gerrera returns, and he's gearing up for a fuel heist. And he recruits, what's the lad's name? He recruits, I'm trying to find his name. This is really Wilmon. That's it. Wilmon, just the lad who was on the farm planet in the previous episode. He gets him to hack into this fuel. It's something called rhydonium, I think. Is it rhydonium? Yeah, rhydonium. It's this super, super toxic fuel that if you breathe it in, either sends you fucking crazy or it can kill you. It's this toxic fume. And Saw Gerrera has just been huffing this shit. He loves it. It's like, like solvents, just breathe it in, lads. The toxic fumes, it'll fuel you. He's essentially on cocaine. He's just sniffing petrol, and it's a very, very bizarre scene. But they extract the fuel, and I don't know if that's going to amount to anything. They're on Dakar. Remember that planet from Star Wars Episode 7 and Episode 8? The rebel base that was essentially Yavin 4 but wasn't Yavin 4 in the sequel trilogy. They're on there, and he just recruits him, and they siphon fuel. And that happens across 2 episodes, 2-hour runtime. That's all I can feel like I can talk about with Saw Gerrera. Is just I guess that's the origin now. That's why he's crazy and why he's insane and unhinged, is just because he's been huffing this rhydonium as much as he can. And yeah, that's shit. I don't know what to say. Carl says, I did hear a theory they're going to download B2 emo personality into a K2, and that's why they have a bond. Oh, I don't like that if that's the case. Oh, no, that can't. No! Oh, do you remember when they did that shit in Solo? Where you have LGBTQ droid who believes in, robot rights or whatever it is, and then she dies, and then they transplant her personality into the Falcon, so the Falcon is actually her when we watch the OT. Yeah, that film isn't canon to me. No. I hope that isn't the case. If you have heard that theory, I'm really hoping that's not true, but we'll find out next week. I feel like I'm all talked out. I did want to try and kind of shoot for an hour on this one, so I appreciate you all for listening to me waffle on unbroken for an hour. I always appreciate it, so thank you to everyone tuning in. Bath Time says, I personally really liked Solo. It's my favorite Disney Star Wars film. It has its fans. I've actually seen, like, the last couple of years, a lot of people have been coming around to Solo. I thought it was just a very ugly film. I thought it was a bit of a pointless film, and I remember getting a bit of a kick out of the Kessel Run scene. It was that sort of call to adventure feeling that I wanted from Star Wars, but at that point, I think it was a little too late. For me, Rogue One is better, but I haven't seen Rogue One in a long time. So once we've done with Andor Series 2, me and JX will be talking about Rogue One and just seeing how well it holds up, if at all. We'll see. It'll be a very different world ending the very, very adult 2 series of Andor, going into the more palatable and by the numbers, some would say, Rogue One. But we'll see. I say, unfortunately, JX couldn't make it tonight. It was all very, very last minute, so I was a little bit unprepared for this, but hopefully I still managed to get my opinion across. And if he's all okay next week, we can start the stream with just getting his very, very quick opinions on these 3 episodes, so we're all caught up. Carl says Rogue One is still great. I really hope it is. I went to the cinema an embarrassing amount of times to watch that film. Genuinely, I think I went 6 times. It's the most time. It's the film that I've seen the most amount of times at the cinema, and I think it was just purely down to the fact that Episode 7 absolutely gutted me, and I was just hating it. And I was like, "This wasn't the film I was hoping for." But Rogue One gave me those Star Wars feelings, and a lot of it could be key jangly. When I watch it again, I was already aware of some of the key jangling moments which I wasn't keen on. The zoom in on the blue milk, you've got the random completely pointless scene of R2 and 3PO in there. Dr. Evazan and Ponda Baba just randomly happen to be on Jeddah right before it gets, you know, obliterated. So I guess they got off planet to get to Tatooine. You know, even some could argue the Vader scene at the end is very key jangly and Tarkin. So I'm going to go into it, you know, with a fresh pair of eyes again, because it's been a good few years since I watched it. But we'll see. Bath Time says, yeah, big up JX, Lord Commander of PowerPoint. Yes, and Carl says, get better soon, JX. Yeah, we're all wishing him well. I'm just going to drop him a message now. I'm finishing here just to check in on him and see how he's doing. But yeah, big thank you to everyone that's tuned in and always keep the conversation going. I really do appreciate you guys. If you haven't done so already, you're discovering this after the fact, please let me know your thoughts on Andor and hopes and speculation for the final 2 arcs. We've just got 6 episodes left of this thing, 2 more weeks, and Andor is done for good. Please do consider subscribing to the channel for more movie reviews, discussions, and live streams. If you like the Star Wars stuff, as I just mentioned, me and JX will be talking about Andor for the next 2 weeks. We'll have a Rogue One video as well. And we're also coming up to the proper 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith, which I believe is mid-May. Me and JX are going to be doing a book versus film comparison, which is very frustrating because Star Wars Theories released a very similar video like that today. But we had this shit planned for ages. So, yeah, we're going to compare and contrast stuff that the novel does better, stuff that the movie does better, some of the deleted scenes that are found in the novel, and essentially are that original 4-hour cut that gets rumored and talked about that George Lucas was originally kicking around. If you into your animated films, me and Dale are going to be continuing our Don Bluth retrospective for the next month or so. So we'll be live again on Monday talking about Pebble and the Penguin. If anything else crops up in between, I'll be talking about it. I've actually booked my tickets so I'm at the cinema this Sunday for the 50th anniversary of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I adore that film. I've never seen it on the big screen before, so that'll be a nice way to spend a Sunday evening. And I've got my tickets booked as well for Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. I had to try and think what it was called then. So I'll probably be doing a recap on the first one, Dead Reckoning, and then going into this new one. So yeah, there will be other movie reviews coming out. It's just the fact that there really haven't been that many good movies coming out recently. I used to be a regular at the cinema, as you guys know, you know, on my old channel, and even at the beginning of this channel, I'd pretty much be at every new movie more or less every other week. Now I'm just like, just I can miss that. I can miss out on what's it called, The Thunderbolts, the new Marvel movie again. And there's a new Karate Kid movie coming out at the end of May, isn't there? So I'll have a review on that too. So yeah, stuff and things are happening with the channel. Bath Time, I haven't forgot our collaboration. We're going to arrange something very, very soon, my friend. I will get back to you once I've got a clear schedule and I know what's going on. But yeah, I'm going to round off here anyway. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in tonight. Hope you're all keeping well, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care, everyone.